Hello and welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan.
And I'm Matthew Lucas.
And we post a video every Friday, so why not hit subscribe and the alert button so you can keep up with what we're doing.
Do. And if you've got a burning horticultural question for Mr. Ryan, put it in the comments below, say where you're from in the world, and he will answer it every Monday in one of our shorts.
Yes, I will attempt to.
You will. I'll read it out beautifully. Now, Stephen, I'm feeling eerily familiar, surrounded by this gorgeous colour.
Yes, we're back at Peter Haeusler's garden and we're going to have another look at Clivias, and we're going to this time look at everything you ever needed to know or didn't even know you needed to know about growing Clivias from seed, propagating them, breeding them, all the things, all that technical data that you need to know if you're going to become the next generation of Clivia collectors.
Which someone needs to be. Now, Peter doesn't have a website, but does have Instagram, so we'll put the link below. And he does sell occasionally at some of the rare plant sales in Melbourne. So just if you're in the Victoria area, have a look at the websites or Instagram pages for those different fairs, rare plant fairs, and you might see Peter's Clivias popping up.
And they'll generally be during the flowering season, I might add.
They will, which is spring.
Yes.
Now, we'll link the previous video before where we talked about Clivia versus Clivia, so we won't go into that now.
Yes, we've done that bit.
Go and do your homework. But Stephen, I'm all for learning how to propagate these plants because there's a huge variety behind us. So let's go and find Peter.
All right, what a good idea. All right, Peter, we're going to have a quick flick round and have a look at all of the different styles and forms of Clivias that we can get at this point in time. And so here we are with all these really pretty, soft, pastel-y coloured sort of Clivias. So what are we looking at here?
Okay, well, the generic name for these, Stephen, is blushes. And the material, the development work is really coming out of China and Japan. And you've even got South African enthusiasts very keen to get their hands on plants and seed and that from South Africa. So what's distinctive about them is a couple of things. First of all, you're moving, this broader move across a whole range of colours towards a more compact plant.
All right, so they're looking for a tight-looking plant.
Yeah, a tight-looking plant that lends itself to smaller gardens, to having indoors and that sort of thing. So you don't have those big, long leaves that flap around and crack and break. So this is fairly typical of a lovely relationship of the leaf width
Let's
to the
hold
leaf.
that out so that people can actually see it. I mean, it's very impressive. I mean, it hasn't got a flower on it, but just look at the form of that. It's just remarkable. So that's the sort of thing, that's sort of a benchmark of what you're looking for, I guess?
That's the style of thing, You will certainly, in China, you'll get far more compact than that even, but you get this lovely symmetry.
So are they actually almost heading towards dwarf?
Well, there are many that we would class as dwarf in China. I mean, I've tried my hand with some of them, but there are other issues they raise. This is sort of, for me, an ideal size. And then the colour that you're getting is loosely calling blush, so it can range from this type of thing, which has just got a hint. But what you find with a lot of these is they come out like that and they'll gradually colour. They'll get a subtle colour. Some will be more of an orange, others more pink, you can see. And here you get an example. This
that one's quite strong in
quite a lot of pink. And this lovely one coming out here, you can see the pink, the lovely blush that's coming through on that. So I think there's always a lot of room to discuss definitions, but I think blush to me shouldn't have much more colour than that. It's like an apple blossom thing. It's just a lovely subtleness about it.
All right, well, let's go and have a look at some others.
All right, Peter, this is the most extraordinary looking flower. So what is this type known as?
Okay, so Matthew, we call these bicolours. So with a bicolour, you're looking for a very clearly defined throat, the yellow part here, and clearly separated from the margin.
Yeah, which I can see is very different from the others we just looked at.
Yes. And the sort of the holy grail is to get
what is the holy grail?
Yes, to get the margin down as thin as you can. So unlike in a hellebore, for instance, where they've got the margin, really just the margin, I think most people would say if you can get that orange component, or it could be a pink or any other colour, if you can get that down to less than 10% or 10% and less,
I see.
then you can call it a picotee.
Right. So,
but I think this is towards picotee, but it's not. I would call this a good quality bicolour with a strong throat. Yes.
Right. So you'd want less orange for it to be a classic, like a good picotee.
Yes.
I see.
Absolutely.
Great.
And the other thing we're seeing with these is again, part of that move towards a more compact plant, Matthew. So broader leaves. They haven't gone as far as the blushes overall, but there's a lot of good material coming out of Japan and again China here, and that enthusiasts around the world are working with. So to get a broader leaf, a more compact plant, because you can see some of these quite compact, some are much more broader in the leaf, whereas this is a more traditional type of bicolour, a larger plant back on that somewhat narrower leaves. But we can still build on that because that's actually got Japanese genetics in it as well as South African. Yeah,
it's very complicated, Peter.
Yes,
you must have immaculate records though, because that's the key to all of this, isn't it?
I've got good records. I don't know about immaculate, but I can interpret them. I defy anyone else to interpret them, Matthew. But yeah, look, it's fun, and I love the more compact plants. And I think, generally speaking, with both growers and other just buyers of Clivias, whether it's a couple or whatever for the garden, the move is towards more compact ones. Certainly nurserymen like these because they're much easier to handle.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, on to the next.
Okay.
Okay, Peter. Now, this looks remarkably similar to the first one we looked at. I'm sure it's not.
The first one, that's a long time ago, Matthew. I'm forgetting what that was. Yes, these... Matthew, there's not a one generic term, but I would call these versicolours. We're sort of it's still in a very developmental phase. You're combining what was called Andrew Gibson and Andrew Gibson Splash with these versicolours. But versicolour is an old Latin term, so meaning changing colour and capturing colour complexity. So what you see here with these, they have, unlike some of the Japanese and Chinese material we've looked at, these have the conventional leaf. From my point of view, to breed from, they're very exciting. They pollinate well, they produce seed beautifully. But what you get there is virtually every flower is different if you looked at it.
I see. And so I was thinking of the blush that we were looking at. That's more even, sort of dead grid. Whereas this is more random, a bit chaotic.
Yes, some of those you can see in the background. That's more the conventional splash type. This is a bit more versicolour where I'm putting more green into the flower to get a bit more colour complexity. But they're a very handsome one. I think they lend themselves to a more conventional garden planting, to get them blowing in the wind a bit. But I think they're particularly attractive because, as I say, every flower is a bit different. Some will have, what we're trying to do with these is keep a good colour contrast on the back. And that can be anything from an orange to
I see that. It's quite strong on the back.
To a burnt, to a burnt red. And there's one called Strawberry Cheesecake, which I've been working on material that I originally got from South Africa, with a beautiful deeper pink or strawberry colour on the back and a light pink inside.
Beautiful.
So I'm doing a fair bit of work with that. But these are very popular with the public. There's not a lot of them around yet. But and as I said, from my point of view as a breeder, they're great to work with because they're just such fertile little levels.
Wow. Well, we love that. And just an FYI, you don't have a website, Peter, but Peter does have an Instagram account, which we'll link below. And you do sell in some of the garden festivals in and around Melbourne.
Yes, some of the larger garden fairs. So not car boot sales sort of thing or small markets.
Heaven forbid.
But yes, the larger garden fairs that are on through the spring.
Excellent.
Yes.
Now, Peter, variegated foliage, it's always one of those things that can galvanise people into different camps.
Yes.
And obviously, Clivias are one of those groups of plants that have thrown interesting variegated forms. So what are some of the forms of variegates that we could possibly find?
Yes, Stephen, look, there are several forms. Probably the predominant one is the striata or stripe variegation form.
So that's a fairly classical sort of variegation.
Yes, so and some of them can be very simple with a dark green and a cream. Others will be much more complex. When you look at a leaf, you've got different shades of grey and green going on.
All right.
So, yeah.
And is stability an important thing when it comes to variegated Clivias? Because I know a lot of plants aren't overly stable.
Yes. Look, variegates are a real challenge because you get a lot of waste. You'll turn up quite a few albino ones.
Oh, yeah, which will go nowhere.
Yes, I did a couple of crosses last year and I couldn't believe it. Every single seedling, like 40, in one cross was albino. But,
the whole lot?
Anyhow,
oh,
yes, so I don't know how that's really happened. But yes, they can be a challenge, and particularly the more variegation, obviously the photosynthesis becomes a bigger issue
so
for
the plant is not going to be as vigorous either as its green equivalent.
It may not be, although as you can see with this one and even this one,
well, that's quite a strong look.
And once they get well established, a variegate will take longer to mature. So you've got them at that seedling stage for longer. I never let any go before about 3 years because it takes till about semi-mature to really see what the leaves are doing.
So
they can change a lot. But also for the plant to develop a stronger root system as well. And once they start offsetting, you've got a much stronger plant. And the offset in a variegate, so this is another thing to note, the offset in a variegate can be anything from plain green to albino or somewhere in between. So it won't be the same as the parent.
It's not going to stay as stable as the parent plant. It could be something different.
It could be either way. I mean, the colour, the flower will be the same as the parent, but yes, each offset will be different. What I do, if it's albino, I'll cut it off below the ground level.
Right, fine.
If it's pure green, if it was a stunning flower, I'll take the offset and maybe save it.
And yes, and then you'll just have a green one.
I'll just turf it out. But look, they are a challenge to grow because of the large amount of wastage. Not only albinos, but you get plain green ones as well. That is no striping in them, and they're much slower to get to maturity. And not in terms of what you were saying earlier. Some people love them, some people hate them.
Well, I have to say, I like this. I'm very happy with this, but I don't like that.
Yes,
these sorts of ones.
Yes.
So those to me look like they've been hit with Roundup or something, but I take it that this is a particular style as well.
Yes, this is a form known as Akebono from Japanese cultivation, hybridization. And again, one of the lovely things about them, so you can get distinctive banding. Some will be more shading, but what you're looking for is a more distinctive band in it.
Yeah, so that sort of band across the leaf is what you're looking for.
But they can be more vulnerable to just sun damage as a result of having a band like that. One of the beautiful things about them, though, is this is actually going to be orange. It looks pink buds, but even an orange one will send up a bright yellow peduncle.
Oh, so the flower stem will be bright yellow.
And the buds on certain forms can be butter yellow and then they'll break open orange. So they're quite stunning. Yeah. And I guess the point I
don't know that you've won me, though.
Well, the point I would make about other forms, I mean, I'm a bit marginal with these, but with the striata ones and with variegation, is it provides you with light in your garden. You can put that in the very shady recesses and you've got that light.
That's what I tell Matthew all the time, that variegations are really good for that.
Yes.
But I have to say you haven't won me on these Japanese variegates, I'm sorry, but there you go. Now, is there any other style of variegation that we should look at whilst we're here?
There's a form like that, but I don't have them, called Light of Buddha, and it has a lot more of the unpigmented part or the lacking of chlorophyll. I don't like those. There's too much yellow, and often they'll start out nice with a nice balance, and the next generation of leaves is maybe more yellow and worse. So I've given up them. But the Akebono, look, here's an example, Stephen, of a lovely contrasty Akebono. See, lovely dark green.
Maybe I could come at this one. I don't know. It's a little better.
Imagine how that's going to lighten up your garden.
Now, I take it that the flower colour can be various in these as well.
Yes. So you can have all the colours that you would commonly get. So I'm getting bronzes into them slowly. I've got reds into the variegates, peaches, yellows, or the pastel peaches, but also what we call the European peaches now. So you can get that spectrum, plain pastels.
And I take it too, just glancing across here, there's also a lot of things happening with, again, the broadness of leaf. So even amongst the variegates, you're getting... Look at that.
That's what you get there.
That's remarkable.
The Chinese influence there with the big chunky leaves.
I love it.
And
I could live with this one.
Flowers.
So there we go.
And there's one other form of variegation, though, I should mention. It's not my favourite, but as a breeder, you've got to keep it. See that?
That's subtle.
That's subtle. It's called tiger variegation.
Now, is this a proper variegation or is it just a strange leaf patterning?
Well, no, it's a proper form of variegation, and it's fairly dominant. You can put it onto something and get it in the first generation.
Oh, right. So it does throw with seedlings.
Yeah, but it will vary a lot. I'm not mad about it. I mean, I'm keeping a couple just for collection purposes. Yeah. But one thing I find is when you've got the flower from a tiger, will have variegation in the flower as well.
All right.
You know how in camellias, they talk about variegated camellias, a variegated flower as well as foliage. Well, you can actually get it looks variegated, but to me, it's not like a normal, like some forms of variegation, if you like. It's spottiness, and it can just look like it's been bleached by the sun. So I'm not a fan of it, but that's what you've got, and some people love them.
Yeah, well, I guess takes all sorts.
It does.
All right, well, that's probably it for variegates. Have we got more to look at? Well, Peter, we've looked at different flower colours, we've looked at different folages, and now we're looking at a flower shape that I've not come across before. So what do you call, I would just call it a double. What would you call these?
Well, they're multi-petals, so your conventional Clivia has 6 petals and a smaller number of stamens. Then we're developing forms that can anything be 8, 10, 12 petals and so forth, right through to this form, which I would call a peony, or someone might prefer to call a chrysanthemum form.
Yeah.
So they're
funny how we name a bloody good plant after another plant.
Yes.
Yes. So fantastic looking things. So and these, are they reasonably stable from seed? Do you get doubles from doubles, or is it?
Yes, you can. We find the normal multi of say 8 or 10, you'll get a proportion in a cross, but you won't know till they flower. And some people say you need to give them a couple of seasons of flowering
to settle down. Yep.
And one thing we do find is they're a bit hungrier. To have a better chance of getting your multi-petal coming through year after year, you need to keep the feed up to them. But then we have this form, which is sort of like a super multi-petal on steroids.
Yes.
So a full multi-petal, and there are variations in between them. The thing you've got with these, so again, the genetics of this is more out of Japan.
Yeah, so you've got the big broad leaves.
Yep. Is you don't get a stigma with these. You can with some of the multi-petals.
So that means you've only got pollen to work with.
Yes, and even then, sometimes you might only get a couple of viable stamens, but there's enough pollen there. And what we're finding with some of these is it's remarkably dominant. And you put it onto something that's not had any multi-petal breeding in, you can actually get this peony form in the first generation.
Oh, goodness. Oh,
so
that's fantastic.
It's a very powerful little creature.
Well, Peter, we've looked at a whole range of different colours in these magnificent plants. So we've looked at very pale sort of lemons and yellows through to apricots and oranges and reds, and I guess, what are you calling these? Coppers?
Yeah, or bronzes. So bronzes, I think what defines a bronze is where you've got the green throat, but you can have a clear green and say white throat and a clear distinction with the rest of it. It's where the green suffuses into the outer colour and almost becomes a bit black. Stephen. So we call those bronzes.
Right.
They'll vary from what we would call a cinnamon bronze, fairly browny type of bronze, through to like these more red bronzes and much darker. And
so they're a thing then.
Yes, they are, and they tend to be characterised by nice compact plants, relatively broad leaves. So they're the influence of the Chinese and Japanese, but still a fairly large plant. They grow into a lovely chunky sort of plant.
They look fabulous.
All right, Peter, now I've heard you talking about peaches often. So I'm presuming this is it. So what's the defining feature of a peach?
Okay, well, broadly speaking, Matthew, there are in fact 2 groups of peaches. And we say groups genetically distinct, and if you were to cross them, you'll just get oranges. So these peaches that I'm talking about here are European peaches. They can also be called Tipperary peaches, Cameron peaches, but the generic overarching term would be European peaches. So what tends to define them is, well, again, a beautiful plant. You tend to get lovely strong plants, good, relatively broad leaves, but the flower in particular, it can vary. You can never be absolutely certain till it flowers, but it can be a rich cantaloupe. What you see is a shading of colours, and that will vary. You can get a lot of pink in them, so much so that someone would look at it and say that's a pink, right through to more apricot, yellow and green suffusion in them. So you get wonderful colour complexity and strong colours. So, but they can vary from sort of a cantaloupe colour right through to what I call a bridal bouquet look. Lovely soft tones, so maybe traditional bridal bouquet.
These are beautiful.
Yes, but they're lovely, and they make really good plants. They grow well. From my point of view, again, as a breeder, you get good strong pollen from them, and they set seed beautifully. But they've been well developed. A lot of the material for these has in fact come out of South Africa in the first place.
Great.
Yes.
Well, Peter, it's time we talked about growing these things from seed. So here we've got one that's actually coming out into flower for this year, but it's got last year's seed heads on it. So talk me through what you look for and when you collect, and how you manage the seed once you've collected it.
Right. Well, Stephen, yes, as you said, these are last year's. So this is just open pollinated. So if it was mine in the pots in the shade houses, I'd have marked what the cross is and written all the details here, recorded. But this is open pollinated. Generally speaking, you've got to be careful not to harvest them too early.
Yeah.
So you.
Well, how would you tell?
Well, once they change colour, so the berries will all start, and they'll be quite green, and they'll gradually colour up. So an orange one like this, and the darker colours will tend to go anything from quite a deep red to this sort of colour, or pink.
Now, if it's slightly softening, is that also something of the...
Some won't colour as much. Some of the greens, for instance, I find don't colour as much. So you just feel, can you get a bit of a nail
you can feel that there's some softening going on there. So the pulp around the seed is actually sort of softening up.
That's right. So the main thing is the colour change, and it needn't have changed completely. These have just been left on for ornamental purposes.
They actually, speaking of which, they're actually really pretty. So I guess if you're not collecting the seed to grow more plants from, they become part of the ornamental value of the plant.
Yes, and you can just scatter them in the garden.
Who knows what will come up?
Well, they'll come up. Yes, you get that colour, and like from the yellows and the peaches, you'll get more yellow berries. So you wait for them to colour up, and the same thing with
so they'll be soft. So so yellow ones invariably send up yellow berries, or is it not always the case?
No, yellow berries. The peaches will have more complex colour. They can be apricot yellow, even some of them more reddish in colour. And the variegates, of course, are very attractive in their own right, because that variegation comes onto the berry, so you can get quite striped berries. And like an orange may be red and black striped.
Oh, goodness me.
And let alone the peaches and that, they're beautiful colour complexity.
All right, so we've decided they're ripe. We've collected them. Do we then store them, or what do we do with the seed once we've got them? Now, Peter, we've got a huge selection of berries in here, so I want you to talk me through how you've designated what they are, what some of them are, and how long we'll keep them like this.
Yes. All right, so these are in fact some late ones, late ripening, because I put most of my seed down, but you can see a bit of the variety of colour, although they'd be much richer. The variegate, for instance, you can see the variegated scape, but also the berries can be stripy to varying degrees. And what you're seeing on some of these is my marking system. So I've pollinated this with 2 different bicolours, and then I've also recorded, of course, on the other side what the stock plant was. So I always have to remember that. Sometimes I forget, which is very irritating. And you can see a bit of a sense of the variety of colours. I mean, that's a bicolour. This is also a bicolour, and the berries are much darker.
Yes, they're almost a sort of a bronzy, coppery colour.
Yes. So here's, Stephen, you can see an example with the variegates. The variegation extends up the main stem, but also into the pedicels here.
Yeah, so the flower stems have got it, and also the berries.
And the berries all the way up. Sometimes you'll see variegates, there's no striping at all here, there's no striping here, and the berries may be very plain. I haven't done enough crosses and research over a long period of time to see whether the striping is correlated with the outcomes, but my feeling is, yes, you want to see more striping in it.
So the variegation needs to continue up through
because otherwise you'll produce a lot of just plain green plants.
All right, so the other question now is, you've got these collected. You've already mentioned that you'll hold them for a week or 2 after you collect them. How long can you hold them? And then once you do start to clean the seed and get ready to sow it, can you store the seed, or do you try and sow it straight away? All right, Peter, so we've got all of these seeds that you've collected, and they've obviously been in here for a wee while. So you talked about it taking a week or 2 before you do anything further with them. But there is the next process you've got to go through. So the next process I know to be cleaning the seed. So when you clean the seeds, and we'll show everybody how you do that, can you store Clivia seed for any length of time, or do you need to sow it pretty well straight away?
I like to, generally, Stephen, I'll clean them, take them out of the berry, because this is a berry, it's not the seed. So
they're inside.
We'll have seed. It can be anything from 1 seed through to 15 to 20 seeds in one berry. So then I will clean them. You'll rinse them a couple of times, keep them in a cup that's all clearly labelled, and then I'll just set them aside, generally for at least a week, couple of weeks. Depends on my time frames and that. It's getting late in the season. I'm keen to. They've been resting a good while, so I'll probably clean them and within a week get them down. But you can store them. They're a very fleshy seed. So the high water content, they'll deteriorate fairly quickly, but it depends the conditions they're stored in. I never store them in the fridge or in any sort of conditions like that. But as an interesting sort of observation here, I had someone send me seeds years ago in the early days. He was sending me a whole lot of little vials in a container for pollen. And he said, look, I'll send you some seeds of this cross. And I got this container with vials. It was coloured, so I couldn't see anything through it. And I thought, oh, he forgot about the seed, but he wasn't charging me for it, so I just let it go.
Yeah.
Next season, I didn't use the vials till next season. I opened it up, and there underneath them in the container, he'd put the seed.
Oh, dear.
They'd been out in the garage. Well, I put them down, and they all germinated.
Oh, so they could actually have a reasonable shelf life.
If you kept them, they need air circulation. You wouldn't seal them. You wouldn't put them in a sealed plastic bag.
Yeah.
I would be more inclined to keep them in a reasonably open container in a cool aspect if you wanted to keep them well. They'll keep quite a way. But having said that, I've had experienced seeds being sent to me from overseas, and others have where they get delayed, sent all around the world, the shipping companies. Yes. And they've been in plastic bags, yes, with little aeration holes, but the seed are virtually rotted out.
Yeah.
So I don't keep them very long.
I was going to say, if you can keep them for a long time, is there any point? Is it better to get your seed in reasonably early? That's where I'm leading now.
Yes, and I think absolutely. You get them in quicker, let them just dry off a bit and just mature a bit more once you've cleaned them. But then we're talking about a few weeks, and then get them down while they're fresh and the vigor's good.
Yeah. So don't store them for any length of time.
I wouldn't. No.
All right, Peter, you're going to reveal to us the secrets of berry washing.
Okay, or seed harvesting.
Harvesting.
Yes, look, a simple process, but for those who haven't done it before, it can be a bit daunting. I remember in my first days, I never knew that you actually had to take the seed out of here. I thought this was the seed.
True confession, yeah. I have buried those in the past.
Yes, and they will grow for you. This, Matthew, is a berry. It's not a seed. It's not a seed pod, so it's a berry. So all you simply do, once it's nice and mature like this, it's easy. I tend to just peel a bit like
looks
that.
Like a mango.
Yes. Well, some of them are actually I've got one that always produces avocado-like green flesh. It's interesting. So there you just simply open it up like that carefully. So you just split it apart like that, Matthew, and then the seed come out. So we've got a good number of seed here. This is obviously pollinated with something else, although it's an open pollination from the garden in this case. So you just clear that membrane away. Don't go scraping any more off, and be careful. Sometimes there's the little eye that's going to shoot there. You can't always see it, but don't get too vigorous with scraping.
Yeah.
So probably a good idea to have your fingernails trimmed, and then just clean this material away. Sometimes, I keep paper towels and even a Wet-X on hand, because some are more fleshy and messy than others.
Yeah.
So you're virtually doing that. You just repeat the process through the whole berry. So this one's got about half a dozen seeds. So they're largish. They're not as large as some. The apple blossom and the mirabilis produce much larger seeds, particularly apple blossom Clivias we're talking about. Some are very small. The nobilis species, for instance, the seeds will only be 2 to 3 millimeters across if you're lucky. But the size of the seed doesn't make a difference to its vigor. And
size doesn't matter in this case.
It doesn't matter. That may disappoint a lot of people, but no, it doesn't. I tend to want to see a nice pearly colour. Sometimes if the seed are a bit more amber looking, generally something's gone wrong there. You won't get as good a germination. So you get that lovely pearly look. So I simply put them in there. They'll get a tag like these ones that I've done before, Matthew. I've done earlier. And you simply tag with a permanent marker, and you're marking what it is. Then I will make up just a simple solution, a little bit of dishwashing liquid in tepid water or slightly warmed water, and just put it in, swirl it around well, maybe let it soak for half an hour, and then tip it off, and then use fresh water again, just cool water, and tip it off again. Then I'll leave them in a sunny aspect like this, not streaming sun that they're going to bake, and you just leave them there and let them dry. Wouldn't keep them in a hot sunspot, but a bright, warm sunspot is good, dries them out. And then you could plant them straight away, but I prefer to leave them a week or two before I put them down.
I was going to ask you a week or two. Okay, well now we're going to move into actual potting shed and just see what the next stage is.
Right, good.
All right, Peter, here we are in the creche, I guess, with the babies just starting to do their thing.
Yep.
Now, I can see you've got them all nicely labelled. So, yes, you're very good with your systems. You've got them in Chinese takeaway food containers by the looks of it.
Yep.
It's a box with a lid on it that comes down. But have you got any bottom heat or any other things that are involved with this system?
Yes, well, I do have bottom heat, so they're on a heat mat here, Stephen. So you don't have to have it, but you certainly get quicker germination, and I think overall somewhat better germination.
Yeah.
Experiments I did early on when I was sort of just getting going, I found much quicker, better germination. But by about 12 months, you couldn't pick the difference between those that had bottom heat and those that didn't. But you probably had a few more.
Yeah, all right. So that makes sense. So the home gardener doesn't necessarily need to have a heat system.
No.
But in your case, when you're growing in quantity, it's nice to be able to move them on reasonably quickly, I guess.
Yes.
All right, Peter. So the mix, what are you actually using as a mix?
Everyone's got different ideas about this, almost every single Clivia grower. Well, I'm using my standard mix that I use, which is produced by a commercial supplier.
So you buy by the metre?
Yeah, by several cubic metres at a time.
Yep.
But it is a formula that I took their premium mix and got them to add some more of the coarser bark and the small stone, the fine grit.
So the grit as well.
So instead of the grit, you could have perlite or something like that.
Yeah, so it could be adapted for your what's available, etc.
Some people will germinate their seed in sphagnum moss. The problem with that is keeping it at the right moisture level. Often it dries out and it's all hard to monitor. Anyhow, this is the way I prefer to do it. I've raised thousands and thousands of Clivias this way.
I just copy you then, Peter.
So these are my community pots. So they'll have about 24 seed for 6 rows of 4 if it's full. So Chinese takeaway food container, and well, you can see like with this one, I put tape around it. I don't want too much light getting in. It encourages a lot of other mossy growth and that sort of thing around the edge.
So you could use a deepish black plastic seed tray or something.
Absolutely. The reason that I like this sort of depth where you're getting 9 or 10 centimetres of depth is because they will stay in these community pots for the best part of a year and develop.
And they do have a strong root, don't they? Because when they first germinate, and we'll pull one out in a second, you do get quite a long root. So if it's too shallow, they've got nowhere to go.
That's right. So they'll wind around, and when you come to tipping them out to divide them all up, it's quite a root mass. But they progress very nicely in that. So what I do is, these have been down about 4 weeks. They're coming on very nicely.
Well, they're germinating quite well because we can see lots of little babies starting to pop up. All right, so they've been in about a month. So that means you started these seed in a reasonably early spring period. So
yes, and
that gives them the longest sort of warm season, I guess, to develop before they go into the cold season again.
Some people will put them down much earlier. Up here, they tend to. It's all about when the seed ripens. So because I had an early flowering last year, I had early maturation of the seed this year. So I was able to get them down right at the start of spring, but they've only been down a few weeks, 4 weeks, maybe 5, and they're germinating very nicely.
But they're pushing themselves up out of the mix. Now, that's something that's likely to happen when people are raising them. Is it something to worry about? Obviously not. You're not worrying about it.
No, it's not. So when I put them in, Stephen, the question I'm always asked is how deep, and I put them just below the surface, and then I'll take the potting mix and I'll add a bit more propagating sand to it, maybe 30%, mix it and sprinkle that across the top as a layer, a little bit more weight in it so it doesn't move around as much when you're watering it. So they're just below the surface. Now anyone looking at this will say, well, they're not anymore. No, they're starting to be pushed
popping up everywhere.
So this is when, if I just get this one, they'll come and you've got the little radicle, the primary, the initial root, and that's, if you could see that up closely, it's covered in little hairs there. So that's getting going, and then what will happen is that root will eventually disappear, fall away, and what we call the adventitious roots, the proper roots.
So this one's only a temporary one.
This is temporary.
And you can see that the green bit at the very top is where the new shoot is going to come from.
Yes, so it's already coming, the leaf, you can see there. So what I do, and I've got to come back and do this tomorrow, is when I see them pushing their way up, I simply get something like the screwdriver, I just push a good hole there, pop it back in, and gently put it around. And generally that won't come up again. It'll keep going down.
I see. So the ones that have pushed themselves right out, you just sort of put them back to bed.
They'll just go back. I'll fix all those shortly. And then there's no problem with them. They keep going there.
I guess the next question, or the next thing we need to define for people is, how long are they likely to stay in this container before they then go out into a reasonable sized pot as individual plants?
Yes, well, as I said before, it depends how well they grow, and they'll grow at different rates.
Yeah.
Some varieties are considerably slower, some are a lot faster. But I'll keep these not in this situation, but in these community pots for the best part of a year. So from here, so they'll stay in this situation. I've normally had them on the veranda. I've just brought them into this situation for various reasons. And you can see here the chains. What I'm going to do is put grow lights across here. I'll do that next week.
Yep.
I've got the lights, so we'll just put them here. The chains are so I can adjust the height. Because again, I've already asked people and I'm getting more perspectives than I have asked people. So in other words, I've got to work it out for myself.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yes, so the grow lights here, the reason for doing that, I've never used grow lights before. I've used the heat mats for many years, is because it's a colder climate here, you've got a shorter growing season, or somewhat shortened by several months. I want to speed them on a bit more. And then from here, they go into a poly house that I've constructed. Someone could have a glass house or something like that. And they'll go into there, and then they'll grow there for the next year. So these will go over within a couple of months. They'll go over into the poly house. They'll stay there through to next spring.
So you won't disturb them again after this season. So you'll keep them right through until the following spring. So a full 12 months before you do anything more.
A lot of people will pot them up a lot earlier. You could take them in 2 or 3 months and put them in their own tubes. But bear in mind, I move them not into tubes, a little 50 mil or 75 mil tubes, but into 100 mil pots. By then they've established some of these adventitious roots.
Yes.
And they can put them in, and they just don't set back. They go beautifully. I find to leave them that long, but a lot will take them earlier. In terms of other care, the question that's often asked as well is, what about fertilizing them at this situation?
Yeah.
I don't put any fertilizer in the mix. My view is that the plant, there has to be enough good material in the seed to produce strong, viable seedlings. But by the time they're ready to move across into the poly house, so in a couple of months, I could give them the occasional foliar spray.
Yeah, so you give them a little
power feed. Just a bit of a low impact nutrient feed. I would not use, there's no osmocote, there's no artificial chemical that's going to run the risk of burning the very tender roots.
I was going to say, I guess raising things from seed like this, you mentioned the fact that they've already got their own food source within the seed anyway, but wouldn't it necessarily then mean that if they're not being too much fed, then it's going to encourage them to send out better roots as well?
Yes,
because they get out there looking for food.
Yeah, yes, and the mix is a lovely, well composted mix, and they're getting that bit of sea soil, which will encourage the root development. So the seaweed based fertilizer, but yeah, I find they get away beautifully. I think sometimes in the quest to hasten the growth, move them on quickly, flower them quickly, you run the risk of producing soft, sappy growth, and that's vulnerable to fungal disease, to insect attack, and that sort of thing. So it's a bit of a balance. You want a pretty hardy plant coming on. So
fair enough.
Yeah, not highly dependent on a lot of nutrient.
All right. I know as a horticulturalist that there's often issues with babies when you're starting them off. So with Clivias, is there any diseases or issues that you have to keep an eye out for whilst they're at this stage and a little bigger?
Yes, well, there certainly are, Stephen. I mean, one thing, you've got a fairly delicate balance of the amount of moisture. So these are a little bit on the dry side, but so they'll need a good water tomorrow. So I'd water them 2 or 3, maybe 3 times a week at this point.
Yeah. But
you don't want excess moisture. If they're too damp, you're straight away going to exacerbate fungal problems.
Right.
Damping off is a huge problem. So literally damping off, the seedling starts coming up, and then you look at it the next day and it's fallen over and it's rotted off at the base. What you want is good air circulation. So I'll leave, while it uses a bit more heat, I'll leave the lid back up.
All right, so that the air can get through.
Yeah, and probably once I put the lights up, I'll take that lid off and just leave the air circulating around. I think is crucially important. The other thing you can use, we have a lot of trouble, or many growers, particularly in warmer areas, have a lot of trouble with fungus gnats.
Oh, yes.
And they seem to get down into the root and they can chew in them, and that causes deterioration fairly quickly. So these little fellas, which are often used around to catch thrip and things like that, sticky as anything. They've got a couple there. They can be very good. I've got to get some and put them around the edge. Generally, by the end of a season or end of a few months, I'll have quite a few on the sticky sheets.
Oh, right. So a little bit of a biological control there.
It is, yes. You've just got to be careful because they're sticky suckers. So that, you get onto your labels and your label's stuck. Cooler climate here, we don't have anywhere near the trouble that a lot of people do. I don't see fungus gnats creating any problems for me. The main thing I watch is for damping off.
Yep.
Now, to deal with that, I use something, a fairly broadish-based fungicide like Mancozeb or Mancozeb Plus.
Yeah.
I think Mancozeb Plus with the extra with the sulfur is very good. So I would, in maybe another month, particularly if I see one seed that's gone damp or seedling that's damped off, I'll then give them a spray.
Right.
But nothing heavier than that. I don't use any other heavy chemicals.
Good.
All right, Peter, now what are we looking at?
Well, Matthew, these are the seeds from last year. So they've been moved from their little, their propagating unit that we've looked at and moved into the polyhouse that I constructed last summer. This is, again, keeping temperatures a bit warmer. I'm going to put a fan in here, a solar fan, just to circulate the air better. But I found that they've kept developing through the winter. Normally I've had a problem with them being a bit slow. So they're coming on nicely. I've done a bit of a cull, particularly in the variegates. I've taken out plain green ones that I don't want, but particularly albinos and things like that. Any weakish seedlings get plucked out at this stage. And the other thing you're looking at, of course, is the pigment. So some crosses, by the pigment, we mean the colour at the base of the plant.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's that an indicator of?
So, well, that gives you a very broad indication of the colour, but...
Of the flower?
Yes. So the broad category. Having said that, I mean, genetics is becoming a bit more complicated all the time as everyone's crossing different things. But by and large, for instance, if it's going to be an orange or red, bronze, you would expect it to have a nice dark purple base like that.
Right.
Okay. Conversely, if it's going to be yellow or peach, or one of the versicolors that we looked at, you call what unpigmented or green based. So there's no pigment in there. Whereas these are quite strongly pigmented. Yeah. So these are actually seedlings in bronze. These are seedlings in versicolor, but they could just as easily be yellow. So that's a very important thing to look at, Matthew. You see in some of the retail outlets, you'll often see the Clivia seedlings that are being sold are categorized there in orange pots for the orange, yellow pots for the yellow. What I notice is often among the yellow pots and the unpigmented bases, there are often quite a few pigmented bases.
Which means they'll be stronger colours.
They won't be yellow.
No.
It means they won't be yellow. So shy clear of them. They need to have that. If anyone's saying it's green and it's a seedling, if they're saying it's yellow rather, it's got to have a green base like that.
Interesting.
Well, Peter, here we've got one of the species ones, and I have to say I do have a soft spot for wild species plants. So this is nobilis, and you think this might well be the first one that was brought into cultivation?
Well, from the reading that I've done, Stephen, yes, that it was a nobilis that was, or nobilis plants, plural, that were taken across and then crossed and eventually crossed into miniata to get these, what we call the Setanthophloras.
Ah, fantastic. Now, this does have a few interesting characteristics. One is the quantity of flowers per stem. Yes. And also the pendulous form. Yes. I mean, its flowers are minute compared to some of the miniatus hybrids, and also that green edge is really pretty around the petals.
Green lips, yes.
And when you told me to rub my hands up along the leaves, there is a distinctly almost sawtooth edge to the leaf, which is not common in this group, is it at all?
Not at all.
Yeah.
No, you get that. Features of it that are quite attractive is, yes, the flower count. So if you want to cross it to miniata, you'll use this species or others like mirabilis to increase your flower count.
Yep.
And that's important because otherwise the flower count will tend to fall away. But this one, the other thing, yes, that lovely fine serration.
Yep.
And you'll notice also, though, Stephen, see the end, sort of the dimple, if you like.
Yeah, it's sort of notched at the very end of the leaf. Yes. So that would be a defining characteristic of this species.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, you don't see it in the others. I mean, it can carry forward when you do a cross. And one of the reasons for using this as a cross is the leaves are more rigid. You can actually snap them quite easily.
Yeah, they're quite hard.
Yeah, but it condenses the plant and enables you to get a bit more structure and form with your crosses.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very impressed. I think one of those is going home with me. Well, it's become obvious to me that most of the hybrids and things that we're growing in our gardens are mainly hybrids of miniatus, but we've had a look at nobilis in one of the shade houses, and we're now standing next to one of your other species, Clivias. And this one's quite different in the way that it grows because it's got a trunk.
Yes, yes, indeed, Stephen. So this is caulescens, and it can develop a trunk or a whole series of trunks.
Yeah.
And it may produce offsets out the bottom, but it can produce offsets part way up the trunk.
Yeah.
And I've seen pictures of this in the wild where that trunk can be several meters long. I mean, this plant, I mean, as you can see, that's probably 900 mils, but that plant's would be probably 20 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say that's got to be a reasonable age because I bought or was given, I don't remember now, a caulescens several years ago. It's flowered, but it hasn't really started to trunk yet.
Yes.
So, you know, it's obviously a slow process.
Yes, yes, it is. I'm very lucky to be what I consider the custodian of some. There was one of the founding members in the Melbourne Clivia group, John Bannenberg, had quite a few growing, and when he had to downsize because of age and health, I bought his collection of them.
So we bought
have them here. Pardon?
You bought
I bought
years.
So yes, I bought probably 20 years, I think.
Yeah, so a really interesting group, maybe not as good for small gardens and what have you, but an interesting plant nonetheless.
Yeah, lovely ones if you want a bit of a fernery look, because they'll grow with any of the fernery things and they'll gradually wind their way up, but they're also very good for interspecific breeding. Crossing with miniatas produces semi-pendulous ones that can often have a green hue, very attractive, and again, being a bit more pendulous, they're a bit more weather hardy.
Yes, so the rain runs off basically.
Yes.
All right.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for a complete rookie Clivia person. This has been fascinating. Thank you for taking us through everything you ever wanted to know about Clivias.
We've all been through the gift shop as well.
Well, yes, absolutely. So as I said before, I'll link Peter's Instagram below, and you often do the plant fairs, the rare plant fairs around Melbourne. So keep your eyes out on that. Peter, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you both. It's been a pleasure. And an interesting experience too.
Hopefully a pleasurable one.
And that too. I was going to get to that. Yes.
Wonderful. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thank you.
So, Stephen, I have a terrible confession that I rescued some Clivia from an old garden that a friend of mine's distant relative was being sold. It was being demolished.
Yeah. That happens.
I just got a shovel and
hoiked them out.
Needs must. And I must say, I mean, as you mentioned in the bit you filmed about division, with that basic garden Clivia, you can just use a shovel, which I did, and they've all survived. And I planted them around a plane tree out the front of our house where they are living their best lives and flowering.
They're an amazing group of plants.
Tough.
But if you want to grow the really good varieties and you want to propagate your own from seed, well, then you need to know all those finer details.
Yeah, and some of the species, the species with the trunk, what was that called again?
Oh, the caulescens, meaning that it has a trunk. Caulescens actually quite literally means that. I mean, so there you go.
Almost like a tree. Unbelievable. I didn't know such a thing existed. So many thanks to Peter for his time today. As we mentioned, I'll put his Instagram below.
And of course, if you're really enthusiastic about any group of plants, including Clivias, then there's always those specialist societies out there. And certainly Peter's been a member of the local Victorian Society for many years. And there's also societies in Toowoomba and in New South Wales. So why not join up?
And I'm sure there'll be Clivia societies or clubs in other parts of the world as well. So just have a Google around and see what you can find. I'll put a link to the Melbourne Clivia group below. So if you're in Victoria, you can join that one.
Good idea.
How could we top this, Stephen?
Oh, I don't know. We'll be somewhere doing something horticultural, undoubtedly.
We will. But until then, you'll have to hit subscribe. We post every Friday to find out what we're doing.
And our Monday shorts. Don't forget those as well.
Yes.
So put it in the comment below if you've got a question. It's a good idea to tell me where you're from so we can have context, and we'll answer them on Mondays.
We will. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye all.